Well, you know what I was thinking? If these
Hello,
are,
I'm Mr. Passardi.
hi there, if these are this is should be included among the recommendations.
Yeah, I had a different order of things, so we'll see how.
All right, because what I was going to suggest is that in order to convey these, I'm going to have to write them up, which means that the verbiage, how exactly we want to word them, right? We, in other words, if we just generally talk about the topic and then it's left to me to go home, transcribe the tape and try to figure out the specific wording, then I'm gonna have to go back and forth with you guys and
Right.
have you edit the document,
That's
which
not
could be endlessly time
Endless.
consuming.
endless.
So,
Can't find it again.
it would be great if,
Just add it.
I know, I'll see if I can look in a minute. Hopefully we'll have like a document type of thing when we come out of here,
I mean, I can,
if we agree.
for example, yeah.
Careful, yeah.
All right.
How you doing?
Finding
Okay.
what you- finding what you're looking for is so.
How you doing, guys?
It's so true when you think stuff.
I know, I'm so spoiled.
The only thing
He's
I.
coming, I just saw him a few minutes ago. Butch.
Somewhere online, under, the www.livingplaces.com, and a long
It's
time
part of
ago,
this.
it was like 2017, yeah.
Clock.
So I was
Well,
looking at
yeah.
this stuff, since we last met,
It's,
just to
4 o'clock.
familiarize myself.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what's written in the beginning of this.
It's a very nice
Oh, it's,
summary of it.
there's so much history. I have read this cover to cover a couple of times,
Mhm.
which shows you how boring it was.
No. Me too then.
We already started?
Me too
Got
then.
started?
No,
I don't think so.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's so exciting.
I'll sit here because he'll come in and sit there at some point. Butch is coming, correct?
Butch is coming, I just saw him.
Oh, cleanly shaved done.
Oh, yeah,
Got the
That's
summer
a
look
little
on.
different. I couldn't figure out.
been over a month already.
I haven't seen you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, how are you?
Well, you must have had a whirlwind of,
Yes, did.
Oh, it's been
Pretty
madness.
much. A whirlwind of activity.
Madness.
What do
Well,
you
I
have
went to
there,
my car
Ron?
2 hours ago and said, oh, I have time. I'll post these pictures. So I was waiting
Sorry,
on
I'm late.
that's all right.
3:59.
That's usually
I'll
my
talk about this, but this is
Modus
what I'm trying to do with some of the work.
operandi.
Oh, okay,
To
yeah,
That's all
create a
Roger's
book
fault
of all
anyway.
the
Yeah.
history and
It's
facts that we
yeah.
found.
good.
Yeah.
Should
Start the
be.
selling
I'll
pan.
mark it.
Oh.
And the pictures are just hysterical.
Alright, see if I can find it. Alright, so I guess if we're gonna be recorded, I'm gonna have to filter myself, damn it.
You always do, Becky.
We ready now?
Yep, we're here.
Yep. There we go.
Okay, Butch, meeting called to order.
Make sure that's ready.
Yep.
Ready?
Yes.
All right. Does anybody make a copy of the agenda?
Yes. Here it is, Butch.
World's most organized
If
person.
if somebody
I
else
thought I
has
just
another
printed it, I
copy,
gave it.
it would be great if we
No, I
could keep
dropped
on.
it. All right, let's call the meeting to order and establish a quorum. And we have with us Beth McGraw, Becky Cosman, Steve Squire, Roger England, Donald Passardi.
Maureen
Maureen
Griffith.
Griffith.
I'm just
This is
feeling,
so
I'm not
much
feeling
way
good today. And
I was
myself, so
wondering if this is
we've
still
established
It
a
is,
quorum.
it is.
Okay.
Review the minutes of the special meeting of June 25th. Is that?
Really was just a regular
Yes.
meeting. June 25th.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes as read for the 25th, June 25th meeting.
A second.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Our next item on the agenda is, I was notified last week that we have to reappoint our officers and chairman, vice chairman, secretary for the next year. So, anyone want to make any nominations?
Do we have to change? Do we have to change?
No, you don't have to change.
I nominate Butch for chairman.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay.
And I would,
Do we want to take them all at one time?
oh,
We don't, you know,
We
we can
could.
take them all at one time
Yes,
in one
yes.
vote if you want to. I will nominate Beth as secretary again.
good with that.
I second.
And vice chairman?
You want me? Yeah, might as well. I nominate Don Facade for vice chairman.
All in
There we go.
favor?
I,
Aye.
Okay, all in favor of all the nominations? I'm not feeling good today, so if I make mistakes, just correct me, please.
okay.
All in favor?
All in favor of all the nominations? It's-
Aye.
Okay.
Anybody opposed?
All right.
I'll
So,
send an email
let me
out
recap.
to Beth
Leonard-
about Palmer.
So I will recap. Leonard Clark has been reappointed chairman of the Historic Advisory Commission. Donald Passardi has been reappointed vice chairman of the Historic Advisory Commission. And I am Beth Magura, and I'm the recording secretary.
I would say elected as opposed to appointed.
We were elected,
Yes.
so that is. That's right.
Hey, here we go.
Thank you, Roger.
Okay. Item 4, discussion where we should be included in the recommendations of the Board of Selectmen regarding the Witt and Pinney buildings. And first item here is Roger has a report that he's going to give us from the Hyde Park Commission last meeting.
Am I getting appointed to fill the extra spot?
You got appointed to the extra
Oh,
spot.
okay.
You're in.
I'm in. I assumed that, but
Yeah.
you never know.
Yes.
So,
Roger told me I was.
Yeah.
Well, that's good
Yeah,
enough for me.
You're in.
It was on, the word was
You
on
were
the
appointed
street.
by
Or
the
I should say
That's
that
you.
Steve Squire, who was our alternate member during the past year, has now been appointed a full member for the current year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, by the Board of Selectmen.
Do
Those
we
were-
need
By the Board of
He was
Selectmen.
appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Do we have to
Before
have
you
more
say something,
alternates?
can I just-
We don't have to, but we should.
Okay.
And may I ask the length of the appointments, because we had differing lengths of appointments.
I
I think
believe,
everybody's just 1 year more from the. yeah,
1 year,
because, yeah, because
okay,
you
because I
had
know
2
we had
years.
2 years, so there was some in.
It's 3 years.
I was 3.
3 years for all commissions,
Well,
except for the officers.
those are 1 year.
Oh, okay.
It's 1 year?
Well, the elections, we have to elect an officer.
Oh, no, the officers, yes, but it's
every year.
3 years for being appointed.
The appointments are different than.
Yeah.
but
Correct.
you
Thank
had
you.
had
So you
forwarded
did,
an
Judge.
email recently to us announcing the reappointment. I did not print that out, so it's not in my notes.
There were,
Okay.
there were 1s and 2s on it.
Okay,
Last
The 2
year,
years.
Butch was appointed for 1 year, I was appointed for 2 years, et cetera.
as was I.
As was I, 2 years.
So,
Okay, so I believe that it's
He's been
simply an
reappointed.
extension of the 1 year
Well-
appointments, which was Don and Butch.
right.
You know-
Right.
We better check
We should
that
clarify
in the
that.
email that was sent from the selectman's office to see how long the
Thank you.
appointments were for. Okay,
Becky's gonna look it
I
up.
think we got it.
I think so.
Okay.
Because our elections for officers are 1 year, but the appointments could be different. I can't remember what they are. But we're all reappointed
They
anyway.
might be different, but
They might be different because they
Tell me.
stagger them.
I
Okay,
remember
so
when.
everybody's not new every year.
I have the initial appointment.
Right.
But that's not relevant now because Butch sent us a new email.
Yeah, I started off
recently.
at 1 year, so now I'm not sure how long the appointment was for.
Anyway, that's an
Anyway.
issue that we can ascertain soon.
Yeah.
Okay, the next thing did everybody receive the minutes of the Hyde Park Commission?
Well, Roger's gonna discuss
Okay,
that with us, right?
yeah, but if they saw the
Yeah.
minutes, you
I
know.
don't know if everybody got the minutes.
I thought I sent it to everybody, but I get
Thank
kinda
you,
goofed.
Donald.
I know
I
yours,
see.
you
Yeah,
probably
I
got 3 times because I forget that if I don't push, all, then,
Yeah, I don't remember if I got it or not.
I tried to send it to
I
everybody.
did see it though,
Okay.
Roger had it.
So Roger, you attended the June 26, 2018 Hyde Park Commission meeting, right, as an
I did.
observer?
I did. And they elected Rick Hartenstein to be president, the chairman, I mean.
Yeah.
And then they went right to the business of their recommendation. This meeting was subsequent to a joint meeting between us and them, where we allowed them to, we presented all the information that we gathered for the history and the will and the options that we've been presented with and come up with for the use of the Hyde Park area and the use of that school. They had deliberated after that and decided that they would make the decision at this particular meeting. So they didn't make the decision right away. But they came in, they were unanimous to recommend that the building be torn down and that some kind of a park would be established there. I'll read the recommendation. The Hyde Park Commission met with the Stafford Historical Advisory Commission and the Selectmen, Mary Mitta, for a special meeting to discuss the future of the Witt Middle School building on May 21st, 2018. The Commission updated us on what is required if the Witt School was to be sold. Necessary setbacks, acres required per housing unit, any environmental issues regarding the duck pond, and other items relevant to discussion. Following the meeting, which was very informative, the Hyde Park Commission agreed to set up a meeting to formally state the Commission's recommendation, which was this meeting. The original will of Isaac P. Hyde states, I give and bequeath all the property held in trust for Eliza F. Hyde to the town of Stafford in the state of Connecticut, but said bequest is made on the condition that said town shall accept the same and appoint a suitable and proper officers or trustees for the administration of this trust, and that such portion of funds as said officers or trustees shall think advisable shall be used for the purpose of purchasing a public park in said town to be known as the Hyde Park. And the balance thereof invested as a perpetual fund, the income thereof to be used for the purpose of maintaining and keeping said park in a careful and proper manner for all time.
Close quote.
End quote. Right. Based on the will and concerns of the Witt School as a housing development, tax burdens, setbacks, and acreage necessary to subdivide property for sale, the Commission feels it is in the best interest of the park to recommend demolishing the Witt building. The Commission would meet again to propose additional recommendations for the property, such as a park. Perhaps utilizing some of the bricks or cornices in a memorial recognizing the area as a location of the high school, dates included, as well as a middle school, dates included. The Commission would meet again to further discuss this matter. So they discussed different ideas a little bit informally after the meeting, but they were pretty clear and solid and unanimous on that decision, that recommendation.
All right, thank you, Roger.
I did want to add in, if it's all right,
Yes.
we provided a lot of information to them, and they were able to utilize that for their principles to come up with that recommendation. I think that the town is starting to become more aware of that choice, and some people are worried that it's going to go the way of Maple Grove or things like that. It's starting to rile up a little bit, which I think is probably good. And I think that I would like to, I put out a small booklet here, printed out, which basically contains the chronology that Beth put in, and that particular set of minutes some information about the Witt School. Most of it is your work. And I'm thinking that it would be nice to put together all the facts and the possibilities, including maybe some of the historical district ideas, so that people would have a source to go to get the detailed knowledge that we already have. They could have a copy at the library, we could put some online, a PDF to download, that sort of thing. I have a really nice two-sided color laser printer and a comb binding machine. So if we'd like to do that, I would love to help collate it and print it. And that would facilitate all kinds of decision-making or understanding of why some things are better than others.
So for clarification, that booklet is intended to help people make a decision on whether we as a community would want to see through their decision, the group's decision to demolish it or not?
Now, our commission here is to gather information and knowledge, and then provide options for the Board of Selectmen to make the decision. But this is a town-wide consideration. Because a lot of people we've done a lot of work, so we know things that people don't know. So the idea is that we can make this available as a resource product of our work.
So people can make an informed decision should we choose as a community to demolish it, right? So this is to help us make an informed decision.
We're providing this
Informed
information
decision.
to the people who do make the decision.
Okay.
An informed decision, just to understand what the history behind the property is.
Before it would be demolished, or not?
Before it would be demolished, or it would be developed, or any of the options.
Okay.
So it's just to make sure that people understand that the history goes beyond the building itself. There's a whole bequest that was part of it, and the Converse family farm. So there's significant history throughout that, and the more recent history is the school, and what viable options might be available for that. That, one would hope would not infringe on the bequest.
Excellent. I understand now, thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Roger, the table of options for the possible use.
Yep.
If this, we should probably include this in any particular information packet.
Yeah, he's got that.
Is it in there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, good, Roger, I didn't
Yeah.
see it, okay.
Does it
Is it up to date?
It's the one from back in May. The
Yeah,
chronology
that's
is up to date with
I
the
think,
changes.
yes, that's
But
great.
I don't think
just
we
checked
changed
that.
this yet.
I don't think we have.
And I would say that this is a limited list. I mean, people may come up with other ideas beyond
Right.
this, so
Right.
we need to just make sure
I think
that
that's
people
okay
know
the
that
way
it's
it is.
not a conclusive list.
Definitive.
Yeah, we're looking for more ideas if people care.
Absolutely.
It should be understood that we are an advisory commission.
Sure.
We were put to this task to investigate options for both schools.
I think that's fantastic.
One of the most fundamental things about Hyde Park is that the bequest that was given to the town of Stafford in 1897 mandated that it be a park in perpetuity. And thereafter, the decades passed, and townspeople did different things with the property. And now we have a school that's been decommissioned and is in very bad condition. So the proposition, there has been a proposition that that part of the park be sold with the building. Some of us find that to be not acceptable. So if people read this document thoroughly and ponder the history of the property, I think you will see that it's not a simple decision that's confronting the Board of Selectmen, who are now in charge of that property. That is the Witt School.
And just for your information, they're in charge of the Witt School only, when it comes right down to it. Every inch of prop land around that building belongs to Hyde Park.
And under it.
The building alone sits on Hyde Park, its own entity. It doesn't go even 1 inch away from the foundation is Hyde Park.
So you're suggesting that they may, should someone choose to own it or purchase it, or if it was ever went for sale, would pose some
well,
problem, it could be
Is
problematic.
this public comment now?
as far as I'm
Are we in
concerned,
public comment?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yes,
discuss
yeah,
it, if it's
okay,
not
yeah.
appropriate.
no, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's not saleable anymore. I mean, how can you sell a piece of property with a 1-inch boundary line?
Yeah, well, it's.
So, you know, with zoning,
There's zoning issues.
with zoning issues, there's no step there, is there?
All right, we've got work to do, so we gotta move on.
Can I ask one thing, Roger?
Yeah.
If you do go ahead and do this, could we have a picture of it in its heyday to really represent the history part of it on the front? You
Yeah,
know,
let's gather all that stuff. I'm open to whatever you want.
I mean,
You have as well.
yeah, I've scanned, you know, from
No,
the
yeah, this is
Historical Society.
this is an idea piece.
I like it, and I have tons of
Let's
photos.
fill it up with good stuff.
Okay,
Okay, so everybody's okay with Roger going ahead and with this?
Yeah,
oh, I think it's great.
I'd be more than
Information's
happy
always
to-
good.
I definitely need help.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so our purpose today, according to, this is a special meeting.
Yes, it is, and we're going to have to decide on what our recommendations are gonna be to the Board of Selectmen, so we need to start that now. Because there's another meeting coming into this room, and so we've got to get our act together and get this going in the right direction here. Okay, Beth, since you're the secretary, did you want to do this on the board? Or,
The board's gotten hard to get to.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
okay, I'm thinking of, this is my thought, so if you're probably better at this than I am, so if this doesn't suit you, then let's change it. I was thinking what we should do is make a list, we have the list, okay, one of the part of it.
Oh, yeah, I could just,
The
can
one
I
that-
borrow that?
The one that Beth has there, and the one that's here, this list.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
thinking that we could use this as a guide, and then what we should do is maybe list these items as recommendations of what could be done. And list them in order of best to worst, or worst to best. And say, these are our recommendations.
Here.
These are either good, bad, or indifferent, and reasons why we feel that way.
Can there be a part before this, because you can say, here are the things the building could be used for,
Yeah.
but the history of the park and I, you know, then what we have thought about, that has limited the potential uses, and I believe in our minds, at least in my mind, let me put it that way. And so I would like to see us advise them to keep it, you know, so that, to keep the building.
You mean, have the town retain ownership, no matter what it's used for.
Yes, and I don't know if everybody else agrees with that, so.
Well, I do agree with you on that. I think that that's the matter.
I mean, I'm not on board with, you know, demolishing it, of course,
Well,
but,
I'm not either unless there's some pretty bad.
yeah. I mean, there's always
But if that's the only,
extenuating.
if it comes down to bad decisions versus demolishing it, I'm go for demolishing it.
Yes,
If you look in the fourth column from the left,
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
fourth column from the left, proposed use,
Yeah.
you will see that we have three uses: sale, lease, or retained by the town, right? So so the second, I should say the, pardon?
4 options:
Yeah,
sale, lease, retained by the town.
3, or demolish, which proposed use, we have demolish as the last item in the table, the last row.
Mhm.
So I don't know if demolishing is a
I
use.
guess that's retained by the town
Yeah,
sort of concept.
Yeah,
Actually, it would be reverting to Hyde Park Commission in all likelihood, which Hyde Park Commission has no oversight from the Board of Selectmen because the Board of Selectmen were to remain separate from
That's
the Hyde
true.
Park Commission.
Right.
Select people were not supposed to be a member of the trustees.
Right.
And now the trustee scenario has reverted to one person. I think Lori, Jen, and Tony, who is the assistant treasurer, is basically overseeing the funds. In the old days, there would be a group of trustees, maybe 3 or 4 people, and they would, according to the old articles, determine how they would invest the money
Right.
in the province of Quebec or, you know, in a railroad or something.
Right.
And then as the decades passed, the trustees just became basically one person. So the commission, I noticed early on, there were a couple of select people. Mr. Preble
Oh,
was
right.
a Hyde Park commissioner, so, and he was a selectman. So,
Simultaneously?
yeah, yeah. So it's gone up and
Right.
down through the decades. It's
Right.
kind of
So
interesting.
are you saying there's kind of a precedent already set as far as that's concerned?
Well, it just, I don't believe that any particular rules were followed,
I agree with you.
you know? And so,
I think the intent of Hyde's,
Right.
bequest,
or is bequeathed to the town as followed.
yes, it was bequeathed. The money, $60,000, the equivalent of $1.5 million in today's money, was bequeathed to the town at the time of his wife's death in like 1905 or something around there. I don't have the chronology memorized, but, and $17,000 was used to buy the land. That was the former Converse estate, consisting of about 150 acres that stretches from Spring Street Bridge up to where the Witt School is today, and behind the Witt School up onto the heights, all the way to the town of Ellington. That's the acreage that Hyde Park is. So,
But I think only this commission, Historical Society people, and perhaps a few other people in town know that, and that's why your idea of having the information and the history, I think is
more readily
great.
available. Yeah.
Because I learned so much from you guys doing that.
So if one of our most positive ideas is having the town keep the building and lease or use it for community purposes, then I think that a recommendation we need to make is figuring out a multi-year plan to restore the building, because it's not gonna be like a one time, in this year, we're gonna do all the work. It would have to be a multi-year plan in order to be able to manage and budget for it over the course of the next.
But wouldn't
That
we
would
need
be,
to,
I'm just writing
that
these
would be
things
more up to the
down.
Board of Selectmen.
Right, but
Yeah.
I think that from the standpoint of if we're advising, then we need to say, we recognize it would be a multi-year plan that would have to,
Okay.
it would be over time. Because the building itself has been unoccupied for
Since
13, 14 years.
For 2006, 2007.
Well, there's levels of this. One is stabilization.
Right.
Another one would be,
but I think we need to kind of step back from all those details of it, the way I'm looking at it, and say, you know, you can sell it or you can keep it.
or you can demolish it.
Or you can demolish it, all right.
Then there's a cost of demolition.
Yeah.
So,
There's the,
first of all, what we're gonna say, is our first recommendation, is everybody in agreement that, that one of the best options, as far, without considering demolishing, okay, that one of the best options would be for the town to keep it and use it. And,
And then, if that's the case, what's the purpose that we recommend it be used for? What's the purpose we recommend it be used for? For advisory, and we say, hey, it's a great idea to keep it, we should have some kind of idea of,
Well, I
well,
think,
we have several here,
right.
right,
we have several.
I mean, personally, I think moving the town hall there is a great idea for, you know, it has an elevator,
It's much
Well,
more.
it doesn't right now, believe me, those are gonna need such extensive work.
Well, it has the
It's-
shafts for the elevator.
Yes, I mean,
No,
let's
no.
face it,
The whole place, let's face it.
it's talking $8 to $10 million.
Right.
Exactly.
You're
But-
talking about the town floating a bond in order to do this sort of thing.
Right, but, I mean, we're just advising, so
Yeah, so-
if somebody asked me in a perfect world, I'd say, make it town hall or have it be a school, like, you know, the
And
SNL.
one thing we have to remember, Don, is that it's, right now, I don't think it's in our purview to even consider what the cost is. That's something that the selectmen needs to do. We're just considering, I think, what our recommendations will be for the building, regardless of cost or anything else.
You really think so?
And that's for them to decide. If they
Well,
want to, you know, if
if
we
we
recommend that, if we say that our first recommendation is going to be for them to keep the building, use it for a town hall and other community activities, then it's up to them to decide whether they want to do that because of the cost.
If we are able to to figure out a way that that the cost could be met, if that comes into our discussions as well, that allows them for a wider vision for what could happen to this place.
But don't we have to present this initial information first? I think that's what's been bogging us down a little bit.
I think so.
Well,
Keep getting
as far as
dragged
I'm
off.
concerned, half of these things, we might as well just put a big X on, like,
But they might decide something entirely different. They might say, no, we're gonna carve a piece of Hyde Park out and sell it to somebody in Dubai. You know, so we need to put all the options there. Hopefully they won't. but-
Well, I'm gonna make a suggestion right now,
Okay.
that we go through this list and see if there's anything we want to add to it, okay? And then if there's anything that we want to take out of it, and then take this list, and on the left-hand column, it's all blank, which is very convenient, that we list our recommendations as best to worst, all right? And number that is like one being the best or
Okay.
one could be the worst. I don't care which way we start with, but that's what I'm thinking. And then we revise this whole list, just move it so that it matches the
Oh, like
numbers
resort it?
and say, this is what we're recommending. Because this is our advice right now as far as we know right now about what to do. And then we can tell
Well,
them that there may be more information coming.
the thing is, I don't think any of us are gonna agree on everything.
Well,
Right, well,
Every one of us is
well,
gonna have a different opinion.
Right.
we'll go through this and see where it should go. And then we'll vote on who thinks which is best, and its majority wins. I mean, if I come in here and say, okay, my pet project is the community college. Now, I think that should be number one. You may not agree with that.
Well, no, I agree with it, but have we done anything?
Well, that's
13
the point
months
right
of-
now, Don.
No, it
The
isn't.
point is, we have to make a recommendation to the,
Yeah, but you gotta have feasible recommendations. You can't just say, hey, it's great for a hotel. Yes, it is great for a hotel, but where are you gonna get a hotel chain
so do
to
you
come
want to
in
leave
here?
that off the list then? Is that what you want to do?
No, I
You
wanna
leave it
get
off the list,
information.
then leave it off the list.
I
If you
think-
tell me that there's a college interest in coming, believe me, I'll do everything I possibly can to back you on that. But I honestly do not see a college coming to this town.
If there is a college interested in coming to use this space in this town, then there's gonna be discussion about the cost and the funding of it. And then that cost funding makes an idea real. Without the cost funding, the ideas are just nice.
Right, because they want it done the way they want it.
The
You know, the
school-
size of the rooms and everything
Well,
else.
we're
The
not-
School for Innovative
if it
Learning
went-
is
if it
trying
went-
to get
If it
money.
went
One
to
at
a
a time,
community
please.
college, or if it went to, say, Goodwin College, for instance, one of the things we've been talking about, the only cost, the town's not gonna renovate this for them. That's
No,
not gonna
No.
happen. We're not gonna bond to renovate for anybody.
that's
Okay.
why you keep
Right,
saying
but-
that you can't get anybody interested
Can
in
I-
a junk building. Yes, you can, get a hold of them, see if they do show an interest in the place. And perhaps maybe even the town would help them.
So you're saying we
come
should
in.
not make this list tonight, we should go and
So-
pursue all these ideas and then come back to it, is that what you're?
Yes,
Here's the thing, I think
Not against
that,
that.
I think that we have a good list of ideas. I think that we have to acknowledge that we don't have, for all of the ideas, the proper funding or the proper backing, or even an interested party in some cases.
For any of them.
For-
Right, I mean-
Well,
Any
I
idea.
mean, Joe Valone is a legitimate interested party. You know, School for Innovative Learning, they've already said that they'd be 5+ years out before they would be able to move into an environment as big as that school.
Plus they got
If we are
0 funds.
recommending that the town, as, if we believe this to be accurate, like as the first choice, the town retain the property, and they renovate the property over time, could they not lease it out to a Goodwin College? Could they not lease it out to the Innovative Learning Group? Would they not then be getting money back in from leasing out the property?
Well, it depends on who,
The town.
the
If
town.
the town retains the property and they lease out pieces of the property for services that, you know, people are being paid for, and they could rent the space
would-
out essentially.
That would depend on what the lease terms would be, okay? And in
Right.
some cases, in my opinion, okay, having certain entities in that building are much more valuable to the town than anything you can get in a lease, okay? I would not have a problem with leasing that building to someone like Goodwin, if Goodwin were interested, we haven't even talked to them yet, or any other educational facility that might want to move in there. I would not have a problem with leasing it for $1 a year, because I think that the value of having something like that there far outside
The benefits of people of Stafford.
yeah, far outweighs the value of, well, getting $100,000 a year in a lease.
So
If that's gonna make
but
a
if that-
difference
but if
having
that's
someone
our
come here.
recommendation, to Don's point, if that's our recommendation, that a school such as a community college or another learning institution lease the property for $1 and do all the renovations, we don't have, to your acknowledgement, we haven't talked to any
We
of
haven't,
these.
we're just
So
making what our, well, if we're not going to.
Because here, we have a list, I mean,
Well,
literally,
if
we
you're
could
gonna
give this
go, if you're
list.
gonna get that strict on this list, then the only thing we have on this list that's viable is Joe Malone and School of Innovative Learning. That's it. There's nothing else here that we've ever talked about, that anybody has ever come in here and said they would be willing to come here. Those are the only two here.
What about Anne Marie?
Or the other option would be
Anne
that the
Marie.
town keep it. Those are three.
What about the ones I brought up over the
Otherwise,
area?
we're doing the same thing no matter what.
Beacon Community.
May I
Yes,
speak,
okay.
please?
Yes.
We have lease, sell, or demolition, correct? Under lease, we have this option. The town gets a bond and fixes the building and gradually leases it out to entities. Maybe at the end it's leased to the School for Innovative Learning. I don't know. I mean, aren't these the broad sweeping possibilities?
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
And that's-
what they are,
and that's
exactly.
what
That's
we-
why I don't see why anybody wants to include a cost on these.
Well, it's not our job to find that out.
No, it's not.
I don't believe that's my job.
Absolutely not. I mean, I agree with you also. It's not our job to do research on what the renovation costs are gonna be. It's not our job to tell the Board of Selectmen, we can make recommendations that, you know, if at a future time, I'm saying, for something like a community college, get one to come here. We could make that recommendation at the time we talk to those people and then make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, saying, look, to attract these people here and get the building renovated, the town will still own the building, a renovated building, not a piece of junk that's up there now. Give it to them for $1 a year. We've lost nothing. We still have a town, and we still have a.
No, you're talking about renovating.
We still have a building. If something happens and they leave, it's a renovated building. In the meantime, if someone comes in and is fairly successful with an educational facility That's incredibly valuable to the town staff. Much more than we could get in a lease anyway, so, I don't know.
The thing is though, Butch, like you said, right now it's a junk building, and, you know, even to get small entities in there, we would have to, you know, renovate it, because you
Why do we
can't,
have to renovate?
Wait,
how's anybody gonna heat it or anything?
can,
Each unit, you know, you still gotta renovate it.
Well,
can,
you're gonna renovate it, but it's got, somebody else is gonna renovate it, the town of Stafford's not gonna renovate it.
can I
The
say,
other-
Mary has made this clear, she's not gonna put a dime into that building. She told me
Exactly.
that.
So then the question is gonna be.
Unless
the
we
que-
could convince them that it's best for the town to put their offices in there. That's the only way that this town is gonna invest a single dime in that building.
Well, it seems like from another perspective, it's gonna be, what are all the possible things could be done with this building? And the other one is, what are the viable things and the costs for this building, and what the town is not in a position right now to spend money. So you come down to that. Or of any of the things that seem to be most likely, how's it gonna be paid for? Because they're not gonna answer that question.
So
Well, they're gonna
when-
have to get another committee to find out how much everything costs.
Have we heard back too from Mary? She had a number of real estate agents who had reached out to her. Have we
They
heard
have
back?
chosen one.
They have chosen one.
Yes, and I would have liked to have brought that person in, just so I could, you know, tell them, you know, the ones that I've checked with. I mean, I still have six names under here that, you know, I've checked with, that, you know, are showing an interest in it. But the thing is, I honestly don't think it's feasible. I mean, now that we've went through the Hyde Park wishes, the Hyde Park Commission, the terms of the deed, the zoning, I mean, like I said, I'd love to get a hotel in here, but zoning would never allow that.
Well, here's the
even
thing,
though
I
building
think
that.
What?
anything is feasible. I think that planning and zoning can make exceptions if necessary, if they find that it's in the best interest of the town.
Well, a hotel would want, you know, enough room to
Right.
have
Well, I'm
a
not
swimming
saying that
pool
I
and
did, in
everything
particular,
else.
I'm saying
Well-
anything is
Yes.
feasible. It's that we're trying to, as a historic advisory commission, be true to the historic aspects of both the bequest and the building itself. And I'm fine with going forward. I'm curious to know, from the real estate agent's standpoint, how they intend to market it.
Right, well, they can't until we decide, even if it, we're still back to day one, deciding whether it can be sold.
Is the real estate
We
agent
are not
waiting
the
on us?
deciding, we are not the
I
deciding
know, well,
factor.
exactly. but
Right.
I mean,
We have
you know,
done-
yes.
We have done a lot of research, and it would appear that the existence of the Witt School in the park is a violation of the
Right.
original bequest.
Right,
And we're dealing with that.
And we have inherited the fallout from that decision. Now, just in the past few days, I did a little more research, and I found an article that was dated, this just goes on and on. Perhaps, let me find it first, and it was from 1939. And it happened to be an article about, titled, "Stafford has many public-spirited citizens." And then it reviews all the gifts that the town was given. The hospital, the town hall, the fountain, and
The bridge.
then, yeah, the bridge.
Yeah.
And then, you know, after several paragraphs with no subheading, all of a sudden it says, "Next Wednesday evening, March 3rd, the voters of Stafford will decide whether or not the new Stafford High School building will be built on the fairgrounds on West Street, now owned by the Stafford Springs Agricultural Society, at a town meeting to be held in the Warren Memorial Town Hall at 8 p.m. At a meeting of the supervising committee held in the public library last Wednesday evening, Charles B. Pinney, chairman, announced that after a careful inspection of all the proposed sites, the members of the committee had agreed that the fairgrounds provide the most suitable location. citizens of Stafford will consider the recommendation at the town meeting. It has been stated that the fairgrounds may be bought for several $1,000s under the $12,000 figure asked by the Ag Society when the town considered the purchase of the property last year. That would have been in 1936. The grounds are already graded, and there are salvage possibilities in the buildings already there, lowering construction costs by a considerable figure. A dwelling is a part of the property, and this may be rented or sold. The site has the endorsement of the State Board of Education. Without any equivocation, 2 of the supervising members of the board have stated that the fairgrounds is the most suitable location for a school in Stafford. There are more than 50 acres in the plot, providing adequate room for playing fields and grounds. There is enough acreage to provide for any future necessary expansion.
Only they've done that.
The location on the edge of town without a house nearby will provide plenty of light on all sides of the building. No architectural plans have been approved after the town meeting. If the site is voted on favorably, architects will be asked to submit plans. And then it goes on and explains why the location up on Hyde and Prospect was not suitable.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then later that year, there's another article that says, this marks the 2nd year that the town of Stafford has been without the famous fair, without its famous fair. So clearly the town, during the Depression, thought that the fair would never be viable again, and they were willing to put the school complex over there. So that I just found a
Wow.
few days ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
not in the chronology, we probably should put it.
why can't we just submit this list the way it is? And say, if they do say, okay, let's check into apartments or whatever, a Joe Valone deal. Then we could also recommend some of the other developers that we have. But I mean,
Yes,
at least let them,
That's true.
at least let them, leave the list just the way it is.
Yeah,
Why
I think
should we
that-
eliminate anybody right now then?
Right.
But I think that we need to, in whatever we formally give them or presentation, that we need to explain to them the history as, I know that you sent that out. And why, if our recommendation is that we not sell it, then why we recommend that. I don't know if we agree on that. So, I mean, wouldn't we say that first?
Well, I think we do have to make a point we have to put a stake in the sand, because some of us have lived here for a long time. We're old timers here. And we will be passing from the scene within the next couple of decades. And people coming behind us, younger people, don't even know that Isaac P. Hyde left a bequest to create the park.
Right.
If he hadn't left the money to buy the land, that would have been sold to Lord knows whom. It could have been a mill,
Our
it could
whole
have been,
downtown would have been different.
it could have been a housing development, it could have been completely different, right? And having done this research, we now know that Julius Converse was the man who created Highland Terrace, and he developed that. There's articles that talk about putting the curbing in and everything. It's all documented. The Historical Society has stuff. I have, I've looked in databases of the local newspapers, Hartford Courant, Springfield Union,
Oh,
Springfield
you did a
Republican.
fantastic job as far as documenting that.
So that land, we know very soon. If we hadn't been even put on this task right now, I don't think that,
But that's why,
question.
I think that's why that needs to be what we should lead with,
yes.
instead of just
Yes.
giving them the list.
Well,
Yes.
if we're leading with that, we should,
In Roger's document,
Yes, I
You know,
think that should
Rogers-
be added to it.
Yeah,
Rogers
I agree.
compiled what we put together as background for the Hyde Park Commission. So we just probably need to ponder what else, like, for an introduction, could we add to that?
Well,
Yes,
I'm
Butch?
thinking that Becky's idea of maybe that's our introduction.
That,
Is that
all
we
that
say,
compiled stuff?
this is what we think. First of all, if you're going to keep the building, you said, and have town of Stafford keep the building and put it to some sort of use for the town.
Okay.
That would be the first thing we say.
Now, do we need to vote on whether that is something we all agree on?
Well-
Retaining the building as opposed to demolishing it?
Well,
Or selling.
selling it.
Oh, yeah.
Demolishing is a whole nother.
Let me just add a piece in there. The Hyde Park Commission decided, based on all of this, that it would be good to have it all be Hyde Park. Part of what we're doing right now with Hyde Park is cars parking for events. We've got the amphitheater with bands and music now in full bloom. People sit up on the sidewalk, people sit on the hill, people come in and park. If you sell the building with whatever easements on zoning or whatever, and it turns into housing, you're gonna have 30 or 40 parking spots up there for cars 24/7. Which means that the use of that for the park activities is going to be GONE. And I think that would be anathema to the commission as well as just keeping the building.
Well, so if in our, like, introduction, say if that booklet were our recommendation, then have an introduction that gives the history and then says why we think the town should keep the building and the reasons like that you just gave, and then go on to, I mean, but, you know, we're just advising, so we still need to give them all these other options that
Well, they're gonna come right back and say, well, what do you wanna use the building for?
we don't know that they
It's,
will.
Well, I'm
Well,
90%
you know, that,
sure.
the moral position is that land should be used to benefit the residents of Stafford in perpetuity.
If morals have been taken into
Right now,
consideration.
except for that school building not being used for anything, the land around it, the trailhead to the trail, the parking areas, the sidewalk up above the hill, are all being used for the benefit of the town of Stafford in continuous use.
Right.
I do think that the Hyde Park Commission, based on our meeting with them and their recent deliberations, seems to think that the presence of the school and the close encounter with selling part of the park with the building, they didn't look with favor upon that.
Right.
No,
You know-
they did not.
Understandably.
And I think, I'm not sure, Roger, because you attended the meeting, but I think you alluded to the fact that Rick Hartenstein, who is now the chairman of the Hyde Park Commission, asked about the School for Innovative Learning and whether they were still interested in the building. And did he act, or did he seem amenable to a potential educational use if that were to arise?
I guess the perspective that I kind of remember, paraphrasing only, is that could the town just decide to keep the building and not demolish it, and that its current use or position as a school building would make, you know, would fit in the benefit of the town. But I would have to ask him directly on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
It seems to me like the best thing to do is keep all the options that we can open. So I think that our recommendation we should not recommend the path that they take.
Yes.
I
Should not
think that we
recommend-
should present
should
the
not- Should not
options.
recommend a path that they take?
Right.
Yeah,
So let's, like I said,
So
let's
Steve,
submit it the way.
may I ask you, so you do not recommend that we advise the Board of Selectmen that the building, or that part of the park be sold? You did not recommend that we advise the Board of Selectmen against selling a piece of Hyde Park?
Well, that's a separate thing that we could say in a forward. You know, that we don't want to close any options, but we would like to,
well,
we would like to give you recommendations, and these recommendations are, but, I mean, personally, I don't see anything that's viable here.
well, I'm gonna give my opinion.
Yes.
Okay, my opinion is that if the town doesn't retain the building in some way, shape, or form, that it should not be sold. it should be knocked down, period.
I'd go with that. That's close to what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I will,
Now, the town can retain it for for their own use, or
Right.
lease the building is by itself, with no access to property, other than, ingress and egress. Other than that, that's it. And they can lease it, but they can't sell it. That would
And
be
you are speaking of non-residential leasing.
non-residential leasing. Right. Residential, as far as I'm concerned, is not an option. Should not be included.
Well, anything that's residential would include the planning and zoning attaching acreage. would it not?
And I believe, what did we, what do we recall it was? Per each unit, it was,
For a
4
total of
units
four
per
acre.
acre.
it was how much?
4 units per acre.
4
I think
units
it was like
per
Yeah.
9
acre.
plus acres for the
Which
30.
means that with 38
36
9 plus
units.
acres.
units in there,
Yep.
we're at 9 acres of
Yeah.
land.
Yeah.
Even if you were to put in 15 condos, then you'd still have to,
Give up acreage.
4
almost 4
units.
acres.
Well,
Yeah.
that would include all of the downtowns, the lower section of Hyde Park, the parking lot in the back of it, and halfway up the hill.
Well,
Well,
the
they had
lower
mentioned
part,
acres.
the
The
lower,
lower part, they
No, I
had,
don't think
he had
we
done
do
a,
that much.
it's 8.8 acres.
right, but the lower part was not under the consideration. The gentleman from planning and zoning had done like just a draft map, and he went up on the hillside
I don't think that
behind the
included.
school.
I
It
don't,
did not include it didn't include where all the activities currently
I'm not
are.
convinced he was, I believe he was carving out an area, but he was not
Yes.
using this unit of 4 apartments per 1 acre. I
Yeah,
thought
he was the one that gave it to us.
I thought he was reducing it.
He was reducing it greatly. He was only gonna go out to the front sidewalk.
Yeah,
And,
because that's the
And,
zoning
yeah,
appeals,
and then the
the
parking lot,
easement, the
yes.
easement scenario, I
Yes.
think,
Yeah.
from Maureen.
There were several acres though that he took into account that went up Woodlawn Trail.
So,
Went up onto the
what
heights
about
of
the
the
Yes.
hill.
realtors
Yes.
that Mary got? We're recommending that they don't sell it, but she went out and got realtors.
Too bad.
We
So
can still
we're-
make our recommendation.
Well, all
Yeah, it's not gonna be a-
we
I
are
mean, as
merely
far as I'm
Is a
concerned,
realtor not
right.
also used for leasing?
The fact,
Can a
oh,
realtor be
of
used
course,
for?
he can find leases, sure.
Right,
I mean, what type of, he's not gonna look for a business if we're not gonna recommend a business.
right. Well, it really is just, to your point, it's about recommendations.
Right,
We're advising.
right.
It's up to the Board of Selectmen to
Right.
determine what action they're gonna take.
Because like I said, I
But
even had,
we should put down, like, these are our recommendations in order, I agree with that, but.
Well,
Yeah.
all things being equal, they would look to us for a viable recommendation. Something that they could consider and decide upon, as opposed to have to go do more work to figure things out.
yeah, but I have.
I think.
thanks for
Yeah,
coming.
like I said, I think we should just submit that paper, just the way it is. Let them decide what they think is best, because maybe even the realtor's already got a hotel or something that he's looking into, like I said, we're just advisors, and then,
I think to your point, having an opportunity to speak to the realtors so that they understand the history and some of
Exactly.
the challenges they may face.
I would love to
Yes.
see the
Well,
realtor come to our next meeting and just see what his thoughts, because I brought that up even to Butch, that, he may say, hey, to do this, you're gonna have to give up this, that, and then we'll have to say, hey, we're against it, but it's still up to the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Well, in the spirit of what you're saying, is here's what we figured out so far, here's what we suggest, and with your permission, we'll continue investigating.
And to your point, Butch, retaining the building or even demolishing the building allows the town to retain control over a vital section of the downtown.
Yeah,
Because otherwise, the town loses control of
yeah,
that
as
completely.
soon as you sell the building,
Yeah.
you lost that bit of control.
Right.
And that's forever.
And then it opens up a whole bag of worms as to
We'll
what
sell
is
and
going to wind
resale
up getting
and, yeah.
sold with it.
Right.
And Hyde Park Commission has already expressed their views, is that they don't wanna see anything sold. They want it
Right.
gone.
I think they
And-
were quite surprised. I mean, I think they were quite
Oh, I
surprised
think
that
they
the
were
park
too.
is 158 acres.
Yeah,
And that the Witt School sits at the top of the hill where the old woodlawn mansion of Julius Converse sat, and it succeeds in sort of cutting off the lower park from the upper heights. Those used to be cleared fields.
Well, I
You know,
think
they-
that
140 acres, yeah.
the Hyde Park Commission are the one, gonna be the biggest beneficiaries of what we do then.
Well,
yeah.
of
Well,
what we
I would
advise.
say that
Of what
the
we
town of
advise.
Stafford,
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
whole,
because
town
the
is the
purpose of the Hyde
beneficiary,
Park Commission
probably.
is for the town of Stafford
That's right.
residents. So that, I mean, hopefully, anything we would recommend would benefit the town of Stafford.
Okay, and I'd just like to make a comment about Donald's wanting to submit this the way it is. I don't think so. And I don't think so because this is a list, it's not a recommendation. Okay, it's just a
YMCA doesn't
list.
work, you
And
won't
it's,
put
and
that
it's
out.
well put together list, but it's still
may I
just a
just
list.
say, it's not I do believe there's some value for posterity if we assume that our, whatever we submit is not going to be discarded the week after we submit it, that this group of people in the past year did consider many things. For example, I had a file at home, and apparently I forgot to bring it, on the YMCA, that had a cover email from Steve Munn, and then I had looked up a couple of things online. For example, remember the little paragraph that indicated that the YMCA, when it was being created in Ellington, was going to draw from a group of 4 or 5 towns, including Stafford, or a radius that would encompass 15,000 users. So, I mean, we could supply that as supportive material to this. There's just 3 or 4, 3 pages with the cover sheet that the YMCA idea was submitted by Steve Munn, a citizen of Stafford. This is what we discovered. The YMCA
I
owns the.
think that's
owns the-
useful, I think that's
it
very
owns
useful
the-
to have in there,
owns-
because
yeah.
then we don't have to revisit it.
Yes.
Unless there's actually new information.
That's
Makes
right.
sense.
Because we found out then that the Indian River, the YMCA owned that property on Pinney Road in Ellington.
Right.
So it's unlikely they would lease from the town of Stafford, for example. But
Right.
we don't know for sure, but that could be like 2 or 3 sentences on a cover sheet with the 2 or 3 photocopies behind it, and it would be background material for this table. It wouldn't necessarily be a recommendation, but it would, Now, for some of these other ideas, I'm not sure we have any information on office complex.
No, we don't, it's just that.
Like
it was
Donald
an
had a
idea.
developer, he said, that
Right.
came to town and he drove him around town. Now, do we put the name? Donald's never offered the names of the people he's,
Because it didn't
Well-
come to fruition.
I see.
But, don't we have
How about the business
two
incubator?
obligations here? An obligation for posterity and an obligation to the selectmen.
Mm-hmm.
So the information the selectmen get, are they gonna go through 50 pages of documentation? Probably not.
Well,
But
I think it's a sad situation when people elected to run this town don't have the stamina to read a serious document.
I'm just saying that, the document for them,
I mean, I'm a technical editor. I've spent decades of my life looking at lots of data. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, Steve, I'm not mad at you. I'm
No, yeah.
just frustrated at the mere idea
well,
that,
the mere idea of elected officials, the information they want and need is probably different than the historical
True.
nature of it,
Yes.
is my point.
right.
So,
Right, it's almost as though you can do a summary at the beginning, summarizing what our thoughts are, and then referencing the pages behind, saying,
Right, and
YMCA,
if-
reference page 3.
if they choose to read it, that's even better,
Yeah.
but at least you gave them the summary so that they
Right,
have
We
some
can,
knowledge.
a table of contents could actually,
Right,
Right.
do that.
right.
But,
That's
but as we have much information from the School of Innovative Learning, and in our minutes over the past year, voluminous minutes, that I've arduously transcribed from the digital recording. Any citizen in town can go onto the town website and read the minutes of our meetings. And they can learn all about Nicole Wykunis and the School for Innovative Learning.
Yes, they can.
So I could go into those minutes and cut and paste chunks of information, and then we could create a section on the School for Innovative Learning.
I think that's
know
a
what I mean?
good idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have a cover sheet that
Yep,
discusses the information behind it, and that information
Yep.
is
we can have
more
her,
voluminous than,
yep,
Right.
we can have her contact information. Joe Valone, I don't have any documentation on Joe Valone.
No,
And we
neither
have
do I, and- but,
some emails.
are we,
This is not recommendations, this is just supportive material.
no, I'm just wondering if we're getting ahead of ourselves by doing all that work for.
Have we ever gotten
I don't-
any direction from whether it's the first selectman or the Board of Selectmen on how they want information delivered to them?
Good point, Maureen.
Have they ever given us any direction, or have
No.
we asked,
No,
like,
no.
Because-
what would be
No,
your
but-
preference?
But what I'm thinking is, what we need to do is give them something like some sort of an executive summary of what we think we should be doing, or what we think
Yeah,
is the best way for them to go,
right.
you know?
Well, I think
That's what I'm thinking.
I think the
Yeah.
push is on since the Hyde Park Commission made a recommendation.
Yes,
Yep.
you're right,
The
Rod.
push is on.
Fever is high.
Fever is mounting.
And what will.
Until
what we-
people lose momentum, because
Oh, yeah,
because
something
their
else
attention
will-
span will be 32 minutes and then on to something else.
Well, there's something called the 300th anniversary,
Yes,
and this
Good
will
point.
fit into people's consciousness.
yes, yes.
It's good timing.
So what you're in favor of is an executive summary that would have 3 or 4 points. And that is the only thing we would submit?
Well, not necessarily, but it should be at least where we start.
Yes.
If there are other, I just don't, you know,
I think we
I
should make
applaud
ours,
your enthusiasm about wanting to dig into all of that.
Right,
I question whether it's really necessary at
Yeah.
this point.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
well, if we do an executive summary, we should make it beautiful. So
Correct.
they'll want, so
That's the
they'll
first
wanna
step.
look through it.
That's a
And
first
you-
Right.
step.
And have some pages with large type on it.
Yeah,
So make it easy.
presentation is
Keep
everything.
it simple.
type.
Yeah.
That's what I said. It's called keep it simple and easy, so that,
Some things in life are not simple, and there are some things in life that aren't easy.
that's, they can read the fine print. But I'm saying, the big points, the points about, the four options we think are viable and so on, they should be large.
Well,
And
is the
then the
exec,
details are in there if they wanna go, but the big ideas should be
Okay, so
presented
big
clearly.
idea, it is now 5:09,
yeah,
and
We have to go till when?
I guess we could go till 6 at the latest.
Yeah, we
People
have
will
other
start
things.
arriving.
Right,
People
I have to
will,
go
Are
till
we,
6.
are we going over the same stuff at this point?
so the executive summary
What does that look like?
will
What are the
consist
components
of,
of it? Yes.
Steve Squire, you said, the bequest prohibits selling part of Hyde Park,
Yes.
period.
They did, in order to get that school there was some pretty shady stuff that went on,
yeah.
Yes,
right? And in a continuum after that,
yes.
so,
Now Butch, and so Butch, you just,
Well, I just don't think we have to have any specific names. We just have this whole thing come directly from this commission. We don't have to say Steve said.
no, I don't mean
No, we're
that.
just
I'm
getting the
just
information.
rehashing my
Becky said it.
notes.
Becky.
No. I would not, you
You can
know.
put my name all over it.
Yeah, right. Me too. Yeah.
Um,
No. Point number 1 that issued forth from people right now, bequest prohibits selling part of Hyde Park. The man gave us $1.5 million because he
Right.
grew up here.
original bequest,
Yeah, the original bequest
yeah.
was
And
the
I think-
equivalent of $1.5 million.
I think as a commission, it's our intent to not compound a decision that was made in the past that did not uphold the request.
That's well said.
Nicely stated.
Yes, very nicely stated. You got
I
that?
hope you're writing it down, because I
I
forgot it
know,
already.
He's got it.
Let's not compound the wound.
That might be a little colorful, but okay.
No, yeah.
On top of which, then at a later point in time, I think in order to gain access to the Hyde Park Trust, there were some more shenanigans that, you know,
Well,
led
we'll
to
just
other
take care of
things.
one wound at a time.
Yeah, there you go.
all
Let's
right.
just work
And
with it
now,
together.
and then we said that the town, if it is unable to retain the Witt building in some capacity, that is for town offices, for community services,
Was it police station as well at one point,
for,
Or
you mean
even,
as an idea?
as an idea?
Move the police station up there?
I thought that was
Whatever.
one from the
Or-
past.
Well, this town hall used to have a jail in it, Maureen.
They might be in need of that much space, the way he's hiring people.
or
Pardon?
even if it's, even if the town retains the building
Yes,
and it's leased to another entity would be acceptable. But sale of the
In whole or
building
part.
with any part of Hyde Park is totally unacceptable as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And I think that we should back up the Hyde Park Commission in that,
yes.
Oh, yeah,
Right, in that,
you know.
we're not compounding any past wrongs.
Yeah.
exactly.
Ron said that. Okay,
So we agree with the Hyde Park Commission that that property should not be sold.
yes.
I think, yes, is everybody in agreement with that?
I
Right?
am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Then it's
Don
unanimous,
is.
everybody, the
Yes.
only one that's not here is Donald,
I think he agreed
I
with
He
that.
did agree with
yeah,
it.
I do.
but,
Because he wanted to,
but we don't need his input
Right.
right now. anyway,
Yeah,
'cause we
actually,
have
we do
enough
have
people
a-
to have a quorum. but,
So shall we make a
Wait a minute.
motion that that's one of our recommendations?
Somebody wanna make a motion?
I'll make the motion that one of our recommendations be that the no land of Hyde Park be sold.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we did it. All right.
Finally, we,
Oh, my God. Yeah, that's a mess.
All right.
All right, so all right, we have one thing.
Now, that's only part of it, but we should give them, make it clear to them that, I think Beth has the notes there, and if this is okay with everyone else, that it can be used for anything the town wants to use it for. the
Town
building.
use,
Or it could be leased to someone where the town retains ownership of the building.
Yep.
Is everyone okay with that?
yeah,
Yes.
Roger?
mhm.
Okay, then we should make it noted that that's acceptable.
With the
Sale of the
exception
building
of,
is
No
not.
residential
Yeah,
uses.
I
Especially
think
with-
leasing
Sale
for
of the building for any
residential would
reason
not
shouldn't
work.
be.
I wouldn't
no,
go
but
with
lease
that.
as well.
I wouldn't recommend sale of the building for any reason, that's my
No, we're
feeling.
talking about
Right.
the lease. So with the exception of leasing for residential purposes.
or commercial purposes.
Well,
For offices, you mean, or,
Do we
I-
need to be?
I don't
Office
think,
condos, whatever.
Would,
Right.
if we are leasing, I would assume,
I don't
and this
think we
is
should,
crazy, that if there are residential,
I don't think we should lease it for residential.
right, that's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Yeah.
That's the
The
exception to
exception
what
of
you said.
residential, we should not lease it
Yes.
for residential.
Because I think if that's the intent, then planning and zoning must have to have a say in that because.
They would have to have a
it's-
say in it.
Right.
See,
The
that-
planning and zoning would have to have a say in much of this,
So
Right.
even if it's leased,
Right.
I think.
See, if,
Depending what it's
Depending
leased
on
for,
what-
because
right.
then you may have zone changes that have to take place.
yes, correct.
Right.
Okay?
Yes,
For
we would.
instance, if you rented it for office space, you may have to have zoning approval for that.
Mhm.
If you lease it for any kind of a manufacturing facility, you may have to have, the only thing you don't have to have it for, I don't think, is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is what Dave Perkins told us, is educational.
Yeah.
because that's what it
Because
is.
it's currently zoned
And
for
you do
that.
not have to rezone it for education.
Right, I think he said
Because
The
that.
open
it's
space
already
was-
grandfathered in.
The open space category is for education, passive recreation, and municipal uses.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And any of those
the
uses would not
offices,
require
Yeah.
a zoning
So
change.
the town
Anything else, I
offices
think,
or
would.
Instead of
police
what
station
it's
could be
not,
done for without any
What we
zoning
recommend
changes.
it's not for, we should recommend what it could be used for.
Well, is that where this comes in?
Yep,
Okay. So see list.
but instead of being negative about it,
Right,
present it positively.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
We do have, so what you're suggesting is after recommendation 1, which indicates that we do not recommend selling, the bequest prohibits selling part of Hyde Park. Thus, we're in support of the Hyde Park Commission. We would accept, retaining the building on the site.
We would recommend.
Yeah.
and
But what is, I don't get this part.
when you write this up,
Yes,
make sure that it's worded as, that it's our opinion and our, after all of our study, that this is it. Because we don't want
Yes.
them to think that we're trying to make any legal
Yeah.
representations, because we're not.
That's right.
We're not attorneys.
Right.
We have to be careful of that, that's all.
okay, so we don't recommend selling part of Hyde Park, but we would.
And I can help you with that.
The recommendation regarding retaining ownership.
Right.
Right, we put that first.
The
You're
town should
getting there.
retain ownership of the building.
To
If they're
either
going
use
to-
itself or lease.
Yeah, but it should not be sold for any reason whatsoever, because of the problems of having it Hyde Park, however
So
you
first you
want to,
have the
however you
land.
want to word it.
First you have the land. Like a condominium sits on a piece of land, but the people who own the condo don't own the land. Then you got the building on the land. So we would recommend that the town retain ownership of the building.
Right.
Yes,
But Hyde Park, yeah, that was in
Right.
the minutes from last time, wasn't it? And then Hyde Park still retains ownership of, or oversees the land.
all the land.
Okay, so the town should retain, we recommend that the town retain ownership of the building. I mean, you'll be getting drafts of this, so please
Yeah.
look for your email and then you can,
If you want to put together a draft, send it out to
Yeah,
us,
of
everybody, and we'll
absolutely.
pick it over and we'll come up with a final document that we can present to the Board of Selectmen.
Those are the only 2 recommendations that we have.
Yeah, well, those are broad,
Yeah, they are.
so it leaves it open to them.
So those
If
would,
you want to,
And
I
I
was gonna
think,
say, if you wanted to include this, we could include it, but we're also, there are some ideas on here that are residential, which we were dead set against.
Did we not give that to Mary?
We did.
Yes, so she
So
has
she
it in
already
her
has,
possession.
it, so we don't need to include it.
and it's on,
She has it in her
it's
possession, the rest of the board of
it's
selectmen may
posted
not.
on the website with our minutes. It's a part of our minutes.
Right, so we can always reference it if we need to,
Yep.
reference minutes this
Okay.
date.
Right.
Okay, anything else? I know you wanted to say something.
Oh, I forgot.
Right. That particular thing we sent out today, that said that the town could get
Could still get tax credits.
tax credits. The problem is that the town can't use the tax credits, because they don't
Right,
pay
it would,
taxes. But,
right,
there could be, down the road, we have to think about this, but not tonight, but I just wanted to make everyone aware. Did you ever want to read what you
Yeah.
sent out?
Yep.
Okay. Because
It is.
it's important, because what the town might be able to do, is when I sent it back, I don't know if I sent it back to you or not, is to, sell the tax credits.
oh.
Which would help with the renovation renovation process.
Ah,
Or if they wanted to renovate it.
Obviously,
But if, they'd have to have it for a use that would be within keeping with the grant, so that's the only problem.
right, and obviously the big hurdle with that is that the town would have to come up with money, do all the
Do all-
rehab,
Yeah, and that,
and then
yeah,
lease
and plus they'd
it.
have to hire an accountant to document all of the.
Right. But they are eligible to get
An outside
other
accountant.
grants from
really?
the SHPA's office, if it's on the National Register.
Okay, just to make everyone aware, okay.
Okay, so that's
That's
going to be,
So,
Roger has.
I got a phrase to suggest,
okay,
okay? You may find a way to include this. We recommend that Hyde Park should in no way be diminished by the future disposition of the Witt building.
I like that.
we recommend that
Read
Hyde
it
Park.
again, Raj.
I
that-
will read it again.
Yes,
Okay.
A little more distinctly. We recommend that Hyde Park
Hmm.
should in no way be diminished by the future disposition of the Witt building.
Like that.
See, that's a positive instead of a negative.
Yeah,
Right.
Good job, Raj.
yeah.
We don't want to
Okay.
lose land to the enjoyment of the park. We
That's-
do not,
yes.
we do not want the parking areas which exist be filled up 24/7 so town residents can't use them.
that's right.
Should we
I-
add to ensure,
Hmm?
to ensure that
To-
residents, to ensure,
Add a phrase at the end
add a
of the
phrase, add the
sentence.
positive phrase, to ensure that the Stafford residents continue to enjoy the amenities
Mhm,
provided by Hyde Park?
mhm. Now, you know, ideally speaking, one would love to for this town to be able to afford to renovate that building and retain it. There's a gym there, there's a cafeteria there,
Kitchen.
you know, the kitchen, you could have, people could rent it for parties.
That's a
No.
very popular idea among people that are becoming aware of it.
Right, and art
is.
studios,
Yeah,
you know, that type.
I mean, you know, it could be many different things. However, the
The hurdle
issue
will
is
be money.
the money. If
One,
this were Windsor, Connecticut, or, you know, Glastonbury, there would probably be a way.
what could happen is because of this, if we start putting this out there,
Yep,
not just as to the selectmen, but maybe the general public at some point. The next meeting is gonna be open, well, this open, always open to the general
Mhm.
public, but I mean, next time, if people come and, or read our minutes, they're gonna become a lot more aware of the possibility that the building's gonna get knocked down at some point. And they might not like that. As a matter of fact, most people right now don't like that idea. And so.
Well, we don't know how many people don't like that idea, we just know that some people don't like that idea. But there could be more that want it down.
There could be.
I've
Well-
talked to quite a few people who are, hey, yeah, that's the best idea.
well, if
Knock
you
it
can,
down?
if you confront them with the fact that, you know, somebody wants to sell off a couple of acres of the park
Yeah.
and put a commercial entity in the middle of the park, and then sever the remaining 140 acres even further from,
Yeah.
you know, the town. I mean, it depends on how you couch the, you know, the building, the prospects for the building.
Yeah.
Well, there are always naysayers
Yes.
anyway, so.
I
Okay.
just wanna say one thing about Windsor and Glastonbury.
Yeah,
They're way bigger towns than
I
ours,
know.
and they probably shouldn't, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to
yeah,
them.
that's true.
We should compare ourselves to Putnam or wherever that's in the same demographics as us.
So the question would be, you know, in 1911, when the land was purchased, and you see the early postcards at the Historical Society, and there's some right there, and, you know, that came from the Historical Society. Those postcards, clearly the town was really proud of the park.
Right.
And the hotel was still here, so it was
Yeah.
still a tourist destination, you know, and some people who are trying to revive Main Street are kind of viewing this as a weekend staycation destination and to have the park again, a beautiful venue, with amenities like the little band shell. That's, you know, people clearly had a vision. The band shell's been there for a few years now. So it would be nice if we could regain that momentum that this was. Now, granted, we don't have, you know, freshwater pools at the spring to
Koi
have around
ponds.
in. Yeah, we don't have
Maybe
koi
someday.
ponds and, you know, little gazebos anymore, but people do have ideas, you know, about that. So yes, we're not a wealthy community, but Mr. Hyde did, I feel like we've been squandering our inheritance in some ways. And it's been diverted greatly to athletics too, as opposed to strolling or hiking or gardening, you know.
Although there was a time when there was, you know, it was used for athletics then,
Yes.
even when it was first.
Yes.
They had
Oh, yeah.
baseball fields.
Oh, yeah, baseball. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but
Right.
now that seems to be its sole.
Well, you know, there used to be, in my own experience, Sunday afternoon ultimate
Right.
frisbee games down there, and I'd go run with the young guys. But, you know, the fact that, and they also had touch football and stuff like that. Now it's kind of messed up with the structures that are there.
Yeah,
It's
you
not
can't,
used that way anymore.
yeah, you can't adapt it so readily, but
So-
at any rate.
So what happens with these recommendations, and then on the agenda, how it says, you know, the deed for Witt and the survey, those kind of become moot, right?
Yes.
Because,
Oh, if the town keeps it, they don't need to have any.
okay, should we
But-
say
But I,
something about the lack of a, you know, even coming into this, that there
yes,
was
Vicki, good point.
a lack of,
Well, I think that those are some obstacles that selling the property we be faced with as a town.
because that would be a good point
Right.
still to make.
Because that's kind of the pros and cons, that's right, there are some significant
Or-
obstacles if sale is to be considered.
That, first of all, when, you know, it sounded great to let's sell the building, but actually carving it out and, you know, having it go through whatever steps it has to go through, and making a deed is, hadn't been done,
Right.
so, but they wouldn't need to now.
They wouldn't need to if it were either
Right.
kept or if it leased. They wouldn't have to, all they have to do is have some kind of a lease agreement, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, if
Okay.
you're dealing with a realtor,
Well,
our recommendations are that we shouldn't be selling this.
Well, let the realtor find someone to lease it, and he gets paid on the lease.
But even with that, they're not just leasing the building, they're gonna lease all the parking area.
Right, they'll have to. Nobody's gonna lease a building if you can't park there.
Yeah, and it's not,
Where are they gonna park? Oh, by the gas station here?
Yeah.
Wow.
Nobody will be able to then come to the farmer's market.
All right, so we're done with the WIP for now?
we have 2 recommendations. That's it.
You wanna do recommendations to them?
And no, 2 recommendations, I just wrote them down in Roger's statement, I'll work that in somehow. And that's,
The recommendations
and
are,
you'll be getting a
which
draft.
one?
Number one, that we are saying that request prohibits selling part of the park, thus we are supportive of the Hyde Park Commission
Okay,
statement, or
Well,
blah, blah,
I
blah.
think we need to be careful with that because the Hyde
Oh,
Park
we-
Commission's recommendation is to
Yeah.
demolish the building. So I
True.
think we need to start with our recommendation is to have the town retain the building, which supports the bequest, not the commission.
Yeah.
The commission's statement,
That is true.
because
Well-
We
because I
support-
think there's some confusion, there will be confusion because
Yes,
because
yes.
everything out there knows that the Hyde Park
The
Commission
demolition
has
is
said
right.
that demolition is their recommendation. So we don't want to say in support of the commission.
Okay,
That's a good point.
okay. All right.
Well, you know, there is an interesting math problem, and I don't know the answer to it, but rehabbing the lease or any other kind of thing that the town would have to do to spend money to retain that building, what's the ratio to that versus the cost of demolition?
Well, it's something they can think about.
Well, there might,
No, it's a math problem, it's
It
a
is.
math problem.
there might be a payback down the road
I mean, I'd
by
love to
leasing it rather than demolishing it, so it's
I'd love to
comparing
see it.
apples and oranges.
see us not
Yeah.
mention demolition if we could. If there's a way to not include that in any, that
Yeah,
word.
maybe we won't, maybe
I
we should
think
Well,
put
yeah,
that.
I'm not ready to exclude demolition as a viable choice.
Oh, I'm not
No, I'm not
excluding
either.
it, I know that it's certainly a possibility, but in looking
So-
at it in a positive way, like Steve has been saying, that, that's a last ditch thing.
So if we're stating that that there are significant obstacles to selling the building, and that the only other viable option that we would put before selling the building would be to dismantle it.
So the way I
To
might
do
do
what?
Dismantle it.
The
It's
positive,
really
It's-
bulldoze
yeah.
it.
It's a little nicer than demolish.
Yeah, right.
but It's the same
Or
for,
salvage, I mean.
It's all
The
about the
positive-
wording.
Salvage
the positive way I would like to suggest phrasing it is that in the spirit of Isaac P. Hyde's bequest to perpetually benefit the people of Stafford, we recommend, whatever the disposition of that building is, that it should end up benefiting the people of Stafford. A demolition and a nice gazebo or some other thing, or a partial demolition and a nice gym or whatever. Any of those options could still end up benefiting the people of Stafford. But if we state it that way, is we've gone back to the spirit of the will. And so here's the way we think it should go.
That's a
I
good
would
point.
still like to not,
All right, let's not get too complicated, let's get it written up and then we'll
That's
pass it around,
simple.
pick it apart,
Okay.
and throw it around.
But there,
And see
That
if we can come up
allows
with
for both.
with a final
yeah.
at the next meeting, is that okay?
Roger's
okay, yeah.
actually expressing the fact that
Because we
that-
keep going on and changing things, and Beth is never gonna be able to keep up.
I know,
I have
this
to
is gonna
record
be
it.
okay,
next
you'll write it
week.
up and then we'll change it again.
Yeah, right, I have the recording at any rate, but
Alright.
I know what you're getting at, Roger.
Good.
Okay, so that's it for the Witt.
All right, now how about the facade in the yard? Please.
All right, so I went to the Historical Society before I came here, and I grabbed the survey that was, what got it nominated to the National Register, so that we have, all of the architectural terms and the sort of the highlights of the building that make it historically significant.
Okay.
So, I'm even just taking this, is,
Verbatim,
yeah,
we can
I mean,
photograph it.
can we, yeah, oh, yes, I can, yeah, and I can send it to you, or we can take it with yours. But with the facade, it comes down to the cornice, the clapboarding, the shingling, the tower in the front, entrance treatments. Windows, of course, I'd like to see the window size remain the same, because otherwise that can change.
It changes the proportions of the building.
Yes. I think those are what we need to address. If that, if everybody agrees with, with that. I don't know if anybody wants to take a look at the, at this. This isn't online, this part of it, the beginning is online, but not each property, which is too bad it's not, but that's why I went down and picked it up.
One thing that I noticed that when you talk about the windows, the size of the windows to be economically feasible and not be custom made might need to change.
That's what you see with historic structures so often, that you need to go to
You put in the
a
plastic
standard.
windows.
Yeah,
Right, and I see that, and then if it's round at the top, they put a piece of plywood in.
right,
Yeah.
And, but sometimes it's so prohibitive. I worked for a company that made windows. You wouldn't believe what a mahogany window costs now.
Really,
Even if it's just the two sashes, never mind the frame and everything.
right.
So that's why the plastic windows are the alternative, because that, it makes any building
But can
cost
you
prohibitive.
Could you have like plastic windows that are still made to the size of,
Custom made?
yeah, custom?
You can, but it
I mean,
would be in a stock look. So the sizes might be able to be changed. You know, the reality of buying a mahogany window,
Right.
Are there mahogany windows in there?
huh?
Are there mahogany windows in there?
Oh, I don't know, I'm just bringing
But
this up.
does it matter
There's a-
what the sashes and the components of it are? I mean, I know that they use a lot of the plastic and
Fiber?
that sort of.
No, you
right.
could, I'm
manufactured
sure that there were
material.
companies around that would make a replacement window that would fit in there just fine. If you take out the
But the replacement window would probably be plastic.
that probably would.
Yeah,
Right.
that's all, that's my point.
Gotcha. I would, as long as it was the same size and, you know, a lot of them have that wood look.
Although, when I did the windows in my house, I have replacement windows that are wood, and they were made by Pella.
Pella?
And I'm sure there are other
They're
companies that
skinned.
do it.
I'm not sure they're wood all the way through.
They are wood,
They are?
yes. They have a clad on the outside that's
Yeah.
like aluminum or
Plastic.
So what we're saying is that the appearance of the building, there are certain features we would like to see. When the deed is drawn up, the easement would recommend that. I mean, the easement is truly prohibitive. The person who buys it is committed to retaining the fish scale shingling and the cornices
In
and
theory, I'm sure everything can be argued.
right.
But, and to keep it wood, I would still like to see, I mean, yes, I
But if you
understand.
put that in the thing, it might be,
Prohibitive.
in any recommend, it might be cost prohibitive to do that,
Right.
to do, well,
to put in replacement wood windows.
Oh,
Not
right.
clad,
Yeah, I'm not sure that we could mandate that.
yes, I know.
But with the clapboarding and the fish scale
Right.
shingles,
and
Those
well, you
things
can-
are
you
easier
can-
to
you
retain.
can-
okay.
You probably can say you can't change the size of windows. I
Yeah.
think you should do that.
Okay.
I think that what's there is pretty good, you're gonna have to read that.
Okay.
You know, I can't remember off the top of my head whether the windows currently in the Pinney have been replaced.
I don't know.
You know,
I mean, they are
we don't
big
have that.
pain,
Oh,
but
wait a
that-
minute, I
What was
might
the
have the-
question?
If the windows have been replaced.
I think they're single pane still, so
Yeah.
that would indicate, that well, they might have been replaced before
They're not.
1970.
They're definitely,
Right.
yeah, they
Yes,
are. Oh, here we
yeah.
go, here we
Yeah,
go.
as a matter of fact, that when they renovated the school for
Oh,
the,
Becky,
Oh, okay.
Board of
That's
Ed,
the
they might have
stairway.
changed the windows.
But they kept the
Well, they
exterior.
might be,
There's
but
another
I think
picture
they're
down in the thing
Yeah.
to get it
Yeah.
back.
So that would have been,
Oh,
oh, that was
sure.
years
The
ago.
exterior
I don't think there's ever-
cornices and all that.
Multi-pane windows.
So like that,
So that would have had to be
that
done.
was closed off
Nobody replaces
for
windows
an
Right.
AC unit.
after 1970 or so with single panes,
No.
or 1980 anyways.
Oh, okay.
They always do, and there's a business that people have going around
This is
and
up the stair.
machining out all the insides to put double pane and single pane windows.
Okay. That makes sense.
And to
Yeah, I
in
think-
my opinion, it looks a mess when they're done, but, I mean, people do it all the time.
Oh, I got you. Well, I think the big thing is the proportions, like you said, the
Right.
size.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, and not removing any
Um,
of the architectural elements from the front.
And maintain, now it's got, that's a wood clapboard siding on it. Do we wanna make that recommendation and possibly gain wood clapboard siding?
I would love to, I think.
Is
I
there,
wanna
is
have-
there, is that,
If you're asking for maintenance now.
But the thing is, that the minute, I have never seen a building that was able to, like, it has dentals, you know,
Yeah.
on the cornice, it has all this molding, and they always have to take off something. I mean, even if you look at one of the Pinney houses on the, going up the hill,
yeah,
you know, one of them has some type of siding, and things have been removed from it, so.
Well, the fact of the matter is they don't, but they do. They don't have to, but they do,
Oh,
okay? But, for the most part. But my only thought on that is that if they replace the siding, they might replace it. I would accept like a concrete siding.
so
It looks just
just,
like-
just to.
It's a
It's
composite
just like-
material clapboards that doesn't
Oh.
dry.
Yeah, and it would look just like, they
Yeah.
look just like regular clapboards, except
Pretty
a
nice
lot more
stuff.
light maintenance free. But other than that,
as long as they don't remove any of the architectural elements,
Yeah,
you know, I
because,
think.
I mean, what's the future gonna bring here?
Right, and even to
And
replace
we're
some
not
of
gonna be
those.
using wood anymore, we won't be
Right.
able to get it. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you look around and you say, oh geez,
You're
it's
right.
funny, but
Well,
commercial wood, wood for commercial use is very limited at this point.
What happens when we run out of petrochemicals?
We go back to wood.
run out of- run out of-
Really,
The thing is, wood's
petrochemicals.
very high maintenance now and
Yeah.
it's too expensive every 10 years. I have wood siding on my house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do
And I
too.
should have put plastic on it years ago, but I don't, you know, I've been fighting it. And I'm sorry I did, at my old age. The peaks are too high for me to climb anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Come on, boy.
Alright, so our main concern is the building retaining the historic appearance, and we don't want a miniature golf course in the front yard.
Right.
But I don't know if we can put an easement into the deed
Yeah,
that,
I don't
Well, you know, actually you can, when it comes to easements on the property like that, you can put it whatever you want.
and the owner might say,
You can say,
I don't-
there's not gonna be any miniature golf, and that kind of things in the front yard, you can put that in there. Put in what you want. If they don't wanna buy it for that, then that's their problem.
so our recommendation would be,
To maintain the
The
appearance of the
architectural-
facade
The
as
overall
it is.
architectural appearance.
And I think you ought to get specific about
Right,
stuff like the siding.
to maintain the overall architectural, overall architectural appearance
of the facade.
of the facade. The interior is already pretty much lost. The
Yeah.
stairway look,
Yeah,
And whoever
stairs.
buys it might want to expand, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, they could expand back, they could expand sideways, whatever, but just to,
Is there an elevator in there?
no,
no.
Well, it's hard to make it a public use building then, isn't it?
Mm-hmm,
that's very
it's not
true.
grandfathered, right? It
Oh,
wouldn't be.
well, how is it that, like, you know, I don't know, it's an 1895
Well, it
building.
depends if
It
it's
was
not
a
a
school
public.
admin building for quite a while.
If it's a private building, somebody buys it for like, say, they wanted to put a restaurant in there and a restaurant and an inn.
Unless there is a need to access
Then I
the
don't think,
second
I
floor.
don't think they'd have to have an elevator.
Okay, right.
Okay. But if it's public building like Stafford, renovated
Yeah,
or
like
something,
here.
then you'd have,
Like your house and all
yeah,
that.
like this one, if you
Well, you know,
renovate
it's-
this building.
it's-
you
it's
gotta put an
interesting.
elevator in it.
It's interesting that the old picture of the building has some different colored details on the trim and the pieces above the windows
Yeah,
and under the
the,
roof section, which have all been painted white since then
it
for
was a light
stupidity,
gray.
simplicity.
Yeah, Becky said
You
it was a
know, you
light
could
gray.
print, you could, I would see someone making, you know, a tasteful painted lady out of this.
I mean, I'd
And it would
love,
sit, and it would be great. It'd be
right, I mean, I'd
wonderful.
love to say, you know, you have to keep it such and such a way, but I don't think that's realistic,
No.
to say anything
Well,
about
in
that.
the formal description in the book here
Or-
that
Say anything
Butch
about
just
color.
passed to me,
color?
Queen
I don't mind
Anne
if
style
someone changes
school.
to
it's a
a
Queen
Victorian
Anne,
lady.
it's a Queen Anne style school.
They
Choose the
do,
right color, it might look really nice.
it might, like, just like Roger just said, yeah.
The formal order of the facade, the classically inspired cornice and entrance treatments reflect the changing taste and style in the late 19th century, while the tower and shingles serve as modest examples of what was the rich diversity of Victorian architecture. So you want to maintain the diversity and richness of the Victorian
Right.
architecture of this building.
Yeah, do we wanna get really
Something like
specific
that
and name
would be a
some of the
nice
things that are in
statement.
there that should not be changed? Like-
Roger, take a picture of that page and email it to me,
I will.
because that, I could lift up.
Can you ask
Because I was gonna say, our recommendation for the Pinney would be to maintain the overall architectural appearance of the 1895 facade, such as,
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah, let's
That
get
would
right
give
down to what it says in there.
yep,
such as,
Margaret.
I mean, cornice, window size, the tower, the,
You can send that to us, Rob.
the bell tower,
Yeah.
Okay?
bell tower.
Entrance tower.
Though I have to say, I don't think I ever heard the bell ringing on my behalf.
I just realized what
Although I
that
went to
is.
school there.
Oh! I know.
Now we know.
the proof that we're a high-tech group?
Yeah, really. Our sound stops working. But I love this thing. I love it.
Oh,
I had no
Becky,
idea
that's right.
what that was. I thought my sight was going,
Ah!
because all I see is a blur against your mulberry
What are you
shirt.
gonna do if your cell phone takes off and flies out the door?
Okay, is that, and then how about the exterior, like the yard? So recommendation 1 is to maintain the overall architectural appearance of the 1895 facade,
And the property around it.
such as blah, 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 blah.
Roger, can we have that book back?
Certainly may, I just sent you the pages.
Thank
Ah,
you.
dang.
Okay,
Major tool.
Yeah, I think you'll be able to pull out of here
okay.
with the, especially this, the top part talks about the, the paired windows, 1 over 1 sash. So I'm thinking that they're thinking that that was original to it. Shoulder doorway frame.
Sure looks the same
Whatever.
now, huh?
You wanted to molded string course on the 2nd level. That sort of thing.
All right, I'll.
Throw the
I'll
word
weave-
ontopleture in there, that's one of my favorite words.
Right, I'll weave that stuff in, and then when you guys get to see the draft, I guess we have to make it, keep in mind that we don't want to overwhelm, right?
Yes. I suppose.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
too much information turns off too many people.
It does, you're right.
but how did I get,
That's why we have
Segments.
sound bites.
right,
Ah.
right,
Really.
detail.
But I would keep the easement on just the facade and just, in front of the building, because what if somebody wanted, what you looking for?
The picture, what happened to the picture?
Do you, the picture went down into there, yeah. Somebody might want to add on to the side or the back. I don't know, I mean,
Yep,
planning
you're
and
right.
zoning would have to,
Well, they would,
Right, we want
Probably-
to allow for
I mean, it is,
people to have some
yeah, they're-
say and creativity around
yes,
their
Right.
property.
that's right.
if
I
they,
mean, you could imagine somebody building off in the back,
on the back especially, yeah.
and look at how there's no woodland, no trees, it was all cleared.
It was.
And I think
There was
Edwin
plenty of
Pinney,
wood then.
Edwin and Esther Pinney lived back behind there, because this was on on the front portion of their property, according
what
to
you could do,
the deed.
what you could do is put in the deed that any future additions would have to mimic the building that's there now. In-
So
Mimic
if
the
something
style.
happened to this building?
Mimic the style, any future
No, I
additions.
mean, I'm talking about if you want,
Queen
if
Anne
someone
style.
wants to come in and put an
Yes.
addition
If
on,
you're adding
that
to,
the
I see,
addition has to
right.
mimic the existing building
So it doesn't,
in its style.
Although,
have a barn.
And
I don't know, I could
architectural detail.
imagine.
I know, I've seen some, although I wouldn't imagine them happening in Stafford, but I've seen mixture of
Very
modern
creative.
and
Yeah.
old that can be very, very attractive.
Mhm.
Although that, probably any
But it
additions
depends
would
on
be
how
more
they do it.
pedantic.
And if you open up the door to let them make a mess, they will,
Right, you're right.
you know?
So we don't want a cinder block
They can
go-
wings.
They can go to
Into the
the
back,
zoning and ask for
a
like
variance.
a variance.
Right.
Right,
Oh.
to the
Well,
Queen
At
Anne.
least there's
Can they-
a
but
fail-safe there to some extent.
I see what you
Somebody's
mean.
gonna pay attention.
I see.
Yeah,
Right.
because this is historical, and I think that they have to check with us.
Yeah, we gotta work
Planning.
through that too, but, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
I see. So,
Who
I
checked?
think that's in the zoning.
Planning and zoning.
so recommendation one, to maintain the overall architectural appearance of the 1895 facade, such as architectural lingo, cornices, fish scale, bell tower, blah, blah, blah. Take an excerpt from.
Yeah, that's good. Blah, blah,
Especially the
blah,
stuff
that's
that's,
good.
especially the stuff that's here.
From,
Yeah,
yeah, from.
That's what, she has, and she has a
And
picture
then,
of that, yeah.
And then we should also address any additions.
And then, recommendation two, well, also, actually, what we're suggesting is that easements be added to the deed. The deed, I have the deed here. So if you wanna look at the deed, which we probably don't have time to do right now, but it's the handwritten deed, because it's
Yeah.
never been sold.
Oh,
That
right.
original deed is the original, is the
Yeah.
only deed.
Yeah, it's got the original deed on
Yeah.
Yeah, when Penny
It's
gave
the
it.
original deed.
Wow,
with
that's
the
cool.
signatures of Edwin Pinney and his, it was actually given by his wife, Esther. So,
He actually, he lived on, yeah, Leonard Road.
on Leonard Road,
At one time, I don't know, yeah, but anyway.
where it says a plaque on the house. So, what we're recommending is that an easement be appended to the original deed if this is sold. Or would a new deed be created in the modern era? They would transcribe that original deed?
it.
How does that work?
You know, I don't
Mister's
know.
planning
Or it
and
doesn't
zoning.
matter.
I don't know.
I don't know, but how
There's
do
a
you,
deed. I'm happy with that.
yeah. Right.
I'm thinking.
I'm happy that it
I'm
exists,
thinking
just
it would
doesn't
be
for
an
the other.
addendum to the original.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
There is a real deed for this one.
Thank goodness.
We'll go with that.
So,
I'm thinking it would be an addendum to the original deed, but I'm not sure.
Right.
so that's our recommendation, to add the following two stipulation, or do we, what do you call them?
Easement, it is
All right.
an easement.
Could I ask one question before it gets too late?
No,
When
no question.
we pass out these,
Okay,
pass along
Mary.
these recommendations, are we done as a commission?
No.
No,
Because
No, actually, that's part of the
Stafford.
agenda.
Stafford 300, is that what we're gonna do as assist?
Oh, no, well,
I mean, what is our?
We gotta get out of here.
I think if there were other buildings,
but planning and zoning, I think is supposed to consult with us if a historic building.
yeah.
But we have to let them know what historic buildings, you know, we need areas,
Thank you, Bill.
we need to work out something, that's a whole nother.
right,
Yeah.
we need to
We'll
know.
do that. We can do that.
I wait.
All right, so,
I did want to say that I became aware of the fact that the Hollow District, although it is on the National Register, the signage is completely gone.
There's one sign,
Yeah. And it's really there, it doesn't even say it's a National Register historic district.
and that could be a 300 project.
Yeah, I think we should try to do
We can
that.
talk to the commission.
I had, and I must have left it at home, which I'm surprised at, but I took pictures of the signage in Hazardville, because they have some nice signage on 190.
Yep.
And
You're gonna do-
Two or either,
Yeah, you're gonna do public
colorful,
comment?
three-dimensional,
Is what?
with the gold,
Public-
gold.
Well, the original one was very lovely.
Was it?
I'm not sure.
You didn't put any public
What happened to it?
Yeah, public comment.
Okay.
The last item.
The historic districts, I think we should still recommend to the
Are
BOS.
we,
Oh, sorry.
do we have everything we need on this, in the first one? Do
Well-
we have anything about?
The two, I'm gonna say that we're recommending for the Pinney that the following two easements be appended. And to maintain the overall architectural appearance of the 1895 facade, such as architectural blah. And then recommendation 2 is any future additions should mimic the architectural style of the existing building. And that does not really address the yard.
No, that's what I'm getting at. We don't
So,
have to do the yard.
Recommendation.
I wanted to make sure we had that in there,
Yeah.
plus we have to address the yard.
Okay, so,
So nothing to be built in front of the building?
Well, I don't know, how much do you want to restrict that? You know, I'm saying, suppose someone came in there and didn't do something like, a restaurant.
right.
Would it be acceptable for them to put a patio in the front yard?
Or parking, if it was.
Right, outdoor eating, parking, there's any number of things, I think if we try and restrict
Couldn't
it,
they park around the back
I think that,
rather than
to
park
your
in the
point,
front?
Steve, anything that they do has to go through planning and zoning anyway.
Right.
I think that is our fail-safe for what is appropriate, because I think if we try to identify all the things, they will come up with something other that's crazy that's not in there.
Yes, that's right.
So I think that's the biggest challenge we face, is if we try and identify every little thing that could possibly go in an open space.
Oh, we're not gonna be able to do that.
Right, so there's no way to make general terms of it.
Well, you could
Easily.
say any
Except if you say
changes
you
have to be approved by,
You can say that.
you could say that about a town meeting.
Right, any changes, like, with the advisory commission's input.
Well, I'm thinking that one of the things we should say,
Yeah,
there
we
shouldn't
may
be a
not
parking
exist.
lot in the front yard.
In a couple weeks.
Yeah.
It
That's,
starts in second.
what?
I think we're going for.
No park in the back.
Yeah.
Stuff to do.
No parking in the front yard.
Yeah.
But
and-
you could have a
Front yards are
patio.
wasted acreage.
Yeah, you could have a patio, you could have other.
and you can have a garden in the front yard.
Yeah, that's what.
So you want to give a few minutes for public comment?
We're not done yet.
We're not done? We're not done.
It's now 5:57,
We've got
we've got
3
3 minutes.
And I have my say about
And
historic
we're not
districts.
restricted to 6 o'clock, by the way.
Well,
No,
they're not here
you
till
guys
7.
stay.
I'm meant to
Oh,
be,
okay.
I'm meant to
But
go
we
to
have to
another
go-
meeting.
You need to go to, oh, that's right,
Okay.
huh, we got another meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna draft some stuff and send them to you,
Okay,
a document, so that you all have input. And, yeah,
And we do meet again.
okay.
very
Can we,
soon,
oh, I'm sorry. you done?
very soon we meet,
Yeah. Can we table the historic district for the next meeting?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that. And we'll go on to public comment. Chris, you got anything?
I guess the only comment I have is, you guys, as a group, alluded to something several times, but you never elaborated on it. And I think it would be to your benefit to include it in your suggestion. You said something, I don't remember who said it, that's not our responsibility to put together the numbers regarding the Witt School. I think if you were gonna present that ideas to the selectmen, then perhaps you say, if you choose to take this route, okay, then you will need to potentially consider developing a subcommittee or a small committee to estimate the costs, you know, for such things, so we can decide on, make a decision on bonding or budgeting or whatever. But I think that would benefit your arguments if you took it the next step further, because you all as a group put so much more thought into it, you know.
And again, it's positive.
It is positive, I just think that you should have some action steps included in there, like, based on your recommendations. If we do X, then this will follow, and, you know, and Y, this should follow.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay,
Appreciate that.
thank you. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second
Second.
motion.
That's why I looked at.
You're always looking at me
All
for
in
the
favor?
seconds.
Aye.
Favor, aye.
6:58,
Maureen, could
6:59.
you slide me that booklet?
Oh, those are great. Do you want me to send you some more pictures?
Absolutely.